Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to episode 4 of the Drum Corps Fans Guide to the World. I'm your host for the evening, David Vaughn. Welcome to this evening's episode. I apologize for not being here for the last couple days. I've been pretty under the weather this last few days, and I've just not really been able to get up and around, but I'm feeling much better today, so we're going to go ahead and discuss some drum corps. We're going to talk about today's competition in Mason, Ohio, the Summer Music Games. And we got to take a look at a couple new corps today. And then at the end of today's episode, we're actually going to discuss where all of the corps that have performed up to this point are ranking. And then we're going to have a power ranking that was put together by my formula, just kind of averaging where the last couple shows have been and where I feel like the direction of the corps are going. And so it's going to be a little bit different show today, but it should be a lot of fun. But we're just going to dive right in. The first corps that we got to hear from, well, the first world-class corps that we got to hear from today, because there were a couple of sound sport corps, and I don't want to get too much into it. I don't analyze the sound sport corps because there's such a wide variety and disparity in there. There's some of the sound sport corps that only have, 5 or 6 people. Some of them march, some of them don't. Some of them have woodwinds, some of them don't. Some of them are all age. Some of them are junior corps. Some of them are not corps at all. And so it's really too wide of a spectrum for me to analyze on this show. I will talk about them, and we'll actually, coming up here before the end, well, I guess here in a few days, we're actually going to have an interview with a sound sport corps director, and so that'll be a lot of fun. But I don't do analysis on their shows just because there's too much disparity. And it's not really fair to those corps for me to analyze them the way that I analyze the Blue Devils and I analyze Blue Coats and I analyze Phantom Regiment. It's not fair to a corps like Cincinnati Tradition, for instance, to nitpick them the way that I would some of these other groups. So I'm just not going to do it. If I try and hold someone like Zephyrus to the same standard that I hold the Troopers, it's just bad all the way around. It's in poor form, and I'm not going to do it. But I will definitely talk about sound sport because they are a part of DCI. They're the fastest growing part of DCI, and a lot of the corps, like the ones that are true brass percussion, color guard, drum and bugle corps, are trying to make that move into open class. And so, I definitely am watching them, and I've got my eyes on a few, and we're gonna discuss them. And so, they will be a part of this show. Don't worry about that. But for tonight's show, we're gonna start out talking about the first DCI affiliated show that we heard from the evening, and it was Music City. And we haven't heard from Music City this year, and they're a world-class corps, so I was excited to get to hear them. They did their show last year, Gasoline Rainbows. It was an interesting show, World War II based. It was a good show, and I enjoyed it. I got to see it a few times, and they brought a lot to the table last year, and I was excited to see them again this year. Their show this year is entitled Violent Delights, A Rose and Its Thorns. And right off the bat, I heard the title and I'm like, you got me hooked already. Let's go. They had a very cool opener. Dark, heavy, good sound, good blend. It was nice. They had a ton of these large, movable, changeable props, kind of triangular shaped, that folded like this. And so, like, if they were like this, they were red, but then when they turned them around, they were like this and they were black. So it was pretty neat. And when they were like this, they made the corps look twice as big as they were. And so it was pretty interesting. You look out and there's just, because their uniforms were also like a charcoal gray to black. And So you look out there, and it looked like there were 250 of them. It was kind of cool, actually. Um, the opener was good. It was kind of nondescript, but it was good. Other than just it was kind of heavy and dark, and I liked it. In the second movement, the brass showed up and they showed out in a big way. It was good deal. It was good. It was a good sound. It was fantastic, and I really did enjoy it. Um, their technical passages in the second movement were not as complex as some of the ones that we've seen with some of the other cores, but this is not an upper level world class core. And this is kind of the first one of those that we've not seen. This is the first world class core that we've gotten a look at that is not going to be in contention for finals. And so looking at them from that aspect and that perspective, it was fine. Their technical passages were good. They were well executed. They were solid. They weren't going. They're not going to score tons and tons of points with them, but they were good and it was clean and I liked it and it was really good. There was a great deal of visual. Um, Between the second movement going into the ballad, it didn't quite work for me. I didn't really care for it. It was almost like it was too busy for what was going on with the music. Um, but then once you got into the ballad, there was a really nice brass octet that was going at the start of the ballad, and then the rest of the ensemble disappeared. Like a number of them were moving props and some of them went off into the end zone, but you look and it's like just the brass octet, and it was really neat because all of a sudden it was just like just them, and it was a very cool effect, and I dug it a lot, actually. And I can't wait to see if they keep that or if they do something else to kind of change that. I hope they leave it as is, though, because it was a really neat effect, and I did like it. They could stand to have a little bit more dynamic contrast in the ballad once the full ensemble comes in. If, their fortes could be more forte, their pianos could be more piano. It was good, but it wasn't great. Um, Building off the theme of the show, a rose and its thorns. At the end of the ballad, they made a rose formation. It was super cool. I liked it. And then they go straight from that into paint it black, and I'm like, yeah, I was loving it. You'll notice all the hair that I have here. I was headbanging. There was no hair flopping back and forth, but I was headbanging. I dug it. I like paint it black. That was good all throughout the show. As I it kind of came to my attention in the third movement. Well, I guess the fourth movement. I was after the ballad, but it was throughout. Their battery playing was good, but it wasn't really crisp. I anticipate it's going to be fixed. It's it was good. I you wouldn't hear any high school, but like you took the BOA Grand Champions and put their battery against it, and Music City would blow them out of the water. By DCI standards, it wasn't really crisp. It will improve. I don't know that it's ever going to be like Boston Crusaders level, um, Blue Coats level, Blue Devils level. I don't know that it's going to get to that point ever, but it will improve. And it wasn't bad. And I like the book. It was a nice book. I kept waiting, like all throughout the show. I kept waiting for that knock you off your feet brass moment, and it just never seemed to arrive. It was like it would build to it, and it just never came. And I kept waiting for it, and it never arrived. There's room for growth in the show, and I have little doubt that at some point it will click and that wow moment will hit. And when it does, I'll be the first one to shout it from the rooftops because I love those moments and I want to hear that and I want these guys to do well. You know, I want the music cities of the world, the academies of the world. I want those guys to do well. You know, I want all of this because I want the activity to succeed and thrive. And so I think it will grow. Well, no, the show will grow. I'm fairly certain that big moment will arrive, and so I look forward to that. And that's a reason that alone is a reason to continue watching this show is for that moment because I know it's going to come. For me, this show this year was a little bit too much like their show last year. Uh, it had it flowed exactly like the Gasoline Rainbow show. If you haven't seen um, Music City from this year, I would encourage you to go back and watch last year's show and then watch this year's show. And I think you'll see the same thing that I saw. A lot of comparison between the two. Um, it's not a bad thing. You just don't want to fall in the habit of doing the same show every year. And I think that kind of happened to the Blue Devils for a while, is they kind of fell in the habit of doing the same cookie cutter style show for a few years until a couple years ago, and they finally broke that mold. And this year's show is nothing like anything that they've done in 30 years. So, you know, I don't want Music City to fall into that trap. Overall, it was a very nice statement to open up their 2023 season. This is the first time that we've seen them this year. It was a good start, you know, and I was glad to see it. I look forward to seeing them in the future. I'm going to Indianapolis. They're going to be there. I look forward to seeing them. And like I said, I'm just because they're good enough that seeing where they're going to go next is enough of a reason to keep watching them. The next corps that came on were the Troopers and their show To Lasso the Sun. Their energy to start was much higher this evening. Uh, their guard hits were landing where they haven't been up to this point in the opener, and it was really neat to watch. This evening, I was really truly just able to sit back and enjoy the performance. It was much improved, and it didn't necessarily reflect in the judges' scoring, but it was better. And I was glad to do it. It's so much so that I realized that we had gotten to the end of the second movement before I had written any notes about them. And so I'm like, yeah, well, I guess maybe I should do my job a little bit. Um, the ballad was extremely emotive this evening, more so than it had been in the past. It was a nice ballad. I mean, it is a nice ballad, but it had been performed well. But it was much more emotive this evening than it had been. It was very, very well done. Something that the Troopers do better than anyone, and I would say that includes corps like Carolina Crown and Blue Devils and Boston Crusaders, year in and year out, is that forte to triple forte with no break in the brass. And this is the first time that I really heard that hit this year. They got the ba, you know, where it just really builds, and then they just crank it with no intonation change, no real tonal change. Just turn up the volume and let it rip. And I knew it was coming. And I think I said it in the very first episode. I knew it was coming, and it arrived tonight. It was great. Um, the brass timing was truly on, especially in the closer. It was great. The snare feature in the closer was a little fuzzier than it had been in the past. It's getting there. Um, you know, these early shows, and now we're kind of getting out of where, especially the Troopers, are getting to where they no longer have the excuse of its early shows. The Troopers have performed more shows than any other corps. Tonight was their fifth show of the season. So they perform more than any other show than any other corps. So they're kind of running out of time for the early show excuse. Um, my goodness, the bass splits were definitely hitting tonight. I'm not usually a fan of down-tuned basses, but I think with this particular show it works really well. And they were, they really did well. The company front section has the potential to be really powerful. It's big now, but it has the potential, just like the Music City show, to step it up a notch. And again, another reason to just continue watching the Troopers show, because it will get there, and when it does, it's going to be powerful. Excuse me. The ending was fantastic. They keep making tweaks here and there, which is what you expect with top 12 level cores. And the Troopers are there at that level. They're going to be in contention for the top 12. Well done this evening. I've talked about them several times. I'm just kind of giving them a once over this evening. The next corps to perform actually were Carolina Crown. And it was weird to have Crown not perform last. They were right in the middle of the pack this evening as far as performance. Their show, The Round Table Echoes of Camelot. Their front ensemble in the opener was just ridiculous. It was so good. So good. The dynamic control in the second movement is just outstanding. The corps is truly starting to operate like a well-oiled machine. So something that Carolina Crown is doing, and they're not the only ones doing it, but the use of concert horns for solos is coming back in vogue. This was an old school thing that corps used to do a really long time ago, and now they're back to doing it. It's interesting because the newer generation think, oh, this is a new thing. This is something that they were doing like back in the 70s. And then it kind of disappeared when power became a major thing. Because concert horns tend to not carry as well as marching horns, which is why in marching band you use marching horns, because you want that directional power. Well, enter 2023, we have amplification for brass instruments. You can, well, a limited number of brass instruments. You can't mic all of them, but you can mic soloists. And so now you can have concert euphoniums, concert French horns. And it makes a difference tonally. The timbre is different, and it, you get that really rich concert French horn timbre juxtaposed with the marching power, and they blend surprisingly well, and it works, and Crown makes it work very well. The music itself, and specifically the stylistic artistry of its performance, truly does tell the story in this show. And my goodness, the execution of the technical passages. Crown is doing Crown things at a Crown level, and give them a few weeks, and it's going to be unbelievable. So something I really didn't realize, so much of this show is at 180 beats a minute or higher. Their physicality is at top notch, and it shows. Their guard was just a touch off tonight, like it wasn't quite hitting, but certainly not enough to worry about. They were elite. The corps was elite, and they're in a good way. And like I said before, they're going to be top 3 in finals, unless something super drastic happens. They're going to be top 3 in finals. The next corps to perform were the Boston Crusaders and their show White Whale. I don't know if I've missed it or if it was new, But I love the effect with the color guard of having they do these flag tosses, and it looks like dolphins coming out of the field with every flag toss. It's really really neat. And like I said, I don't know if they've been doing it or if this is something they've added. I just hadn't caught it up to this point. Um, at the very beginning, a color guard member looked like they tripped and fell. I hope they're all right. Uh, didn't look to be too severe. They didn't lay on the ground or anything. So I hope it was just trip and fall, something minor. I'm still not a fan of the sectional feature where they hand off the features from the upper brass to the percussion to the lower brass. It's well executed. Don't get me wrong. It still doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. Outstanding execution, just as always, of the very difficult closing set in the opener. Tonight was probably their best execution of the opener. Um, I've heard it, and I couldn't quite figure out how to describe it. Tonight, I figured out how to describe it. They have an old school style drum break between the opener and the sea shanties. You remember, like marching band in the 80s, how you would have your opener, maybe a ballad, and then a drum break. And then that was like a dedicated song that was just drums. And then a closer. That's what this is. It's like an old school drum break between the opener and the sea shanties. It works. It's kind of throwback, kind of retro. I like it. It's cool. Um, the Contras nailed Wellerman tonight. The trumpets did not nail their shanty. It sounded pretty rough, actually. Um, the more I watch the show, the more I realize it's such a fun show. Um, the mellophone solo was beautiful in the ballad tonight. It was fantastic, and I love the heart attack coming out of the ballad. It is extremely clean, very very well done. The guard's solid, but is not as great as they've been the last couple performances. Um, Overall, though, the Corps' drill execution is the best of any corps that I've seen this season so far. It is well done overall. Their drill execution is next level. If if it was just a drill off, Crown's winning. Or excuse me, Boston is winning. It was well done overall. Room for improvement, definitely. The last corps of the evening were the Bluecoats, and their show's entitled "The Garden of Love." First thing I noticed as they were setting stuff up, their guard uniforms are bright. They're like coral colored under like a black light. They're super bright. Um, Fantastic introduction. Um, their uniforms go with the show very, very well. A lot of flowers. Like I said, the title of the show again, The Garden of Love. I'm not a huge fan, and I guess I'm enough of a not fan of it that I addressed it twice in my notes. Um, I'm not a huge fan of after the first movement, nearly 45 seconds of narration with no music and only choreography. Not a big fan of that. I don't mind narration for a few seconds with a little bit of choreography, kind of like they did last year in Rifts and Revelations. And I really hope that there's a section of music that they're going to put in here with this. But they're doing choreography during all of this. So I don't think there is. And if so, that's not good. Um, I do love how well their uniforms fit with the show. It really really makes it. And this is a big difference between when I marched and now. Is when I marched, the uniforms were your identity. Now the uniforms are the show's identity, and I dig that a lot. Do I miss being able to identify the Corps by the look? Yes, but I do like being able to figure out what their show's gonna be by how they look. I like that a lot. Um, Color Guard is definitely on point. They're good. Um, a few timing issues with the double time drill. There was a collision between a color guard and a trumpet player this evening. That's to be expected. This is their first show. You know they're gonna have issues. Um, Fantastic flugelhorn solo in the ballad. Uh, their ballad was good overall. And then something that the Blue Devils do really, really well. They had a great apex building up to the fermata in the ballad and then letting go. It was great. Um, Marching trombones. They have a marching trombone section. I'm not a huge fan of trombones in DCI, admittedly. I'm not. But if they're going to be there, I've wondered a lot of times why nobody marches them. Um, Bluecoats are marching them. So I applaud them for that. Terrifically executed music and drill throughout. Um, Really, my only knock on their show, it's just throughout entirely too much choreography with no music in the show. And I may and I hate to be that guy. I may sit down with a stopwatch and time it next time. Just off the top of my head, it was nearly 2.5 minutes of choreography with no music. I think I may be missing a page of notes. Um, no, yeah, no, I got my notes. Okay, yeah, 2.5 minutes of their show was non-playing choreography, and I was curious to see how it was going to play with the judges. Um, I'm still curious, even after knowing the results, how it's going to play with the judges. It didn't really tell me much. Um, so my results from tonight's show overall is a very enjoyable show. My results for the evening were outstanding brass to Carolina Crown, outstanding percussion to Boston, outstanding color guard to Carolina Crown, and best general effect to the Bluecoats. I had fifth place being Music City, fourth place being Troopers, third place being Bluecoats, second place being Boston Crusaders, and first place being Carolina Crown. And I was a tenth of a point off from nailing it. So I'm getting better at this game. Uh, DCI's results: fifth place, Music City with a score of 66.25. Not a bad opening result at all for them. Fourth place, Troopers with a score of 72.05. And that's about a half point drop from their last show. And that's the second time in 5 shows that they've dropped from their previous show. So maybe a little bit of concern, but their previous show, like they jumped 4 or 5 points. I can't remember. I have to look. So, I don't know. Concern for me, I thought it was their best performance. So we'll see. Third place were Boston Crusaders. And here's where I missed. Boston Crusaders were 79.75. They had Bluecoats in second with a score of 79.85. I had Bluecoats third and Boston Crusaders second. So I was only a tenth of a point from being right on there. And then Carolina Crown in first place with a score of 80.15. So overall, a good show. We're starting to see a few cores break 80 now. So yeah, it was a good show. It was a good show. So what I want to do now is I want to take a look at the scores from the respective cores so far. What I did was I went through and I ranked all of the cores by average score. And a couple of these are going to be really, really skewed. Um, for instance, Bluecoats and Music City, because they've each only performed once, and so their average is whatever they got. Um, so right now, by average, the top core is Bluecoats with an average of 79.85. Do I believe that they're the top core? No, because they were the second best core tonight out of five, and I think that there are other cores that are better. So, but by average, they're the top core. Give it about a week, we'll have more accurate reading. Second, and this is where it does get a little bit more accurate. Second are the Blue Devils with an average score of 78.85. Third is Boston Crusaders, counting tonight, with an average score of 78.483. Fourth is Carolina Crown with an average score of 77.7, and that does count tonight. Fifth are the Cadets with an average score of 74.25. Sixth are Phantom Regiment with an average score of 73.613. Then seventh, you have the Mandarins with an average score of 72.817. Eighth are the Cavaliers with an average score of 71.833. Ninth are the Blue Stars with an average score of 71.325. And then a fairly substantial drop. And you have the Troopers in 10th with an average score of 69.04. The Colts in 11th with an average of 68.288. Madison Scouts in 12th with an average of 67.15. Music City in 13th, but again, they're skewed because they've only performed once, with an average of 66.25. And then you have the Academy in 14th with an average of 65.933. Pacific Crest next with an average of 64.1. So that's the average of the cores that have performed up to this point in world class. The world class cores that have not performed yet, however, are Blue Knights, Crossmen, Genesis, Jersey Surf, Seattle Cascades, and Spirit of Atlanta. So there's going to be some jostling. So yeah, some of these are going to move around quite a bit. So I don't anticipate Music City remaining in the top 12. I don't see that happening. In open class, this is where it gets kind of fun. In open class, you have Blue Devils B with an average of 62. Second are Spartans with an average of 61.85, so right there. Third are Gold with an average of 61.6. So you've got a log jam right up at the top. Then Golden Empire, fourth with an average of 56.15. Vessel is fifth with an average of 53.25. Seventh Regiment is sixth with an average of 53.225. Impulse is seventh with an average of 52.425. Colt Cadets are eighth with an average of 50.85, and Blue Devil C are ninth with an average of 49.975. The open class cores that have yet to compete are the Colombians, Guardians, Heatwave, the Stentors, Raiders, River City Rhythm, Southwind, and the Battalion. And so those are also going to shift quite a bit. Also, only one open class corps has performed more than twice, and that is Colt Cadets. And so they have probably the most accurate gauge of where they are. So there could still be some pretty major shifting up or down. So what I want to do now is we're going to throw those averages out, and we're going to give you what I've got for my power rankings. My power rankings are taking the last 3 shows that the cores have performed and just taking those last 3 into account, because that's the most accurate gauge for where we are right now with these cores. So right now, my power rankings, my number 1 core in world class is Blue Devils. My number 2 core in world class are the Boston Crusaders. Number 3 is Phantom Regiment. Number 4 are the Mandarins. Number 5 are the Cavaliers. 6 are Blue Stars. 7 are Troopers. 8 are Madison Scouts. 9 are the Colts. And 10 are the Academy. So that's my top 10 power rankings for world class. The only core in open class that is qualified for a power ranking are Colt Cadets. So right now, Colt Cadets are the number 1 power ranked core. Enjoy, Colt Cadets. This is your time to shine. So that's where everything is kind of standing right now. These rankings, 1, they're not official, and 2, they're going to be switching around like crazy here for the next little bit until everyone starts performing and getting into a little bit of a groove. And like I said, about the time we get to San Antonio is about the time that we're going to start really getting a picture. Right now, we don't even have a picture of where things are standing. The Bluecoats are not the number 1 core in DCI at the moment. I'm not completely sold that the Blue Devils are. Right now, the highest score of the season belongs to Carolina Crown, but I don't know that they're the top core the top core in DCI either. They're, if you go by average, they're number 4. So it's so hard to tell, right now. But I am so excited because now we're getting to the point where cores are starting to perform. And I think a week from tonight, every core in DCI will have performed. And because I do think that the last cores will perform their first competition show a week from tonight. And so then we can really start taking shape and getting some good ideas. I do just want to give you a little bit of a heads up. I will not be doing episodes on the evenings of the 16th and 17th of July. On the 16th of July, so I'm the director of bands at Oklahoma Panhandle State University, and on the 16th of July, we're going to be hosting Seattle Cascades. And then on the 17th of July, the OPSU band is going to be at the Canyon, Texas show. And so I will not be doing broadcasts those 2 nights. But we're going to try and kind of keep things rolling and going up till then. We obviously we won't have a show tomorrow because there are no shows tomorrow. But we're going to keep this up and going. Like I said, this weekend, I'm excited. We're going to have an interview for you with the director of Northern Lights Drum and Bugle Corps. Excited to get that one up and going. It'll be our first official interview here on the broadcast, and I'm excited for that. I do want to remind everybody to please take just a moment, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button, hit the like button down on the bottom. Leave a comment if you like what we're doing. If you don't like what we're doing, also leave a comment. I try to respond to every comment that we get. As the channel grows, it may become harder and harder to do that. But please, comment. Let me know what you think of the product. Share it with your friends. We want this to grow. We want this to become a big thing. I would like this to become the primary, unbiased DCI analysis show. And this isn't going to end when DCI season ends. We're going to carry on, and we're going to do WGI and BOA as well. And so this is just going to keep going, and hopefully it'll be a year-round thing. So I'm excited about that. And we're going to bring you as many show reveals as we can, bring you as many interviews as we can. So we're going to try and keep this thing going year-round. Once again, I'm David Vaughn. I've been your host here. And just a reminder that no amount of success can compensate for failure in the home. Make sure that you let your family know each and every day just how much you love them. And remember, this is a Drum Corps fan's guide to the world. We're just living in it. Until next time, take care and God bless.